Yeah, so Kirsty, while I was sort of talking to you before, you used the term sharenting. And I had never heard of sharenting
What is
before.
that?
So what is it, Kirsty? Can you explain it to us?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the new, I suppose, digital version of sharing your parenting online. So videos and reels of your children, babies, toddlers being posted online. And I'm sure we all know proud parents who love to share what their children are up to. But this is a new version of putting this just available publicly, openly online. And
So
as you said, I used to
just
work for UK government. I was very involved in online safety and the policy around that. So it's a topic that I think is pretty important and something I've
uh,
worked a lot on.
and just to clarify, you said this is a new way. I mean, in the old days, Alice was once a little baby, and we would just without pause just show stuff on our holidays, just put snaps, and there was this old thing called Facebook, which we used to use where we'd swap pictures and stuff. I know things have moved on since then, but this is what we're talking about. That is sharenting.
Yeah, can you? Yes, because I think Lucian's point, to take that on, I think there was a lot of innocent sharenting without, when you are a proud parent yourself, you just think your children are fantastic and that everybody will want to see them just like you want to, just share your joy and love. What's the downside of this, and why has it become a thing called sharenting? Is it about virtue signalling, or is it more sinister than that? Is it actually about putting young people in danger?
It's complex and nuanced, isn't it? So I think absolutely you want to share your photos with your friends and family. That totally makes sense. And we do that in a digital way now. But the difference is when you're putting things on the open internet. So people you don't know, you have never met in a completely different country to you, can see these photos and videos and then essentially do what they like with them. And so the kind of sinister side of that is that we see a lot of material coming out of AI now for child sexual exploitation material. And that AI has to be trained on some data, pictures of children. And you may not even be thinking about that when you're posting this publicly online. So especially as video editing has got better, you can blur the face of your child or put an emoji on or something, and you're still sharing it in a way that's just a bit more considered, I suppose. And the threat has changed. I think when people were sharing things on Facebook with their friends and family, that's very different to now, where things are being publicly posted on TikTok and you have zero control over what happens to that video once you've posted it. People can
And
make memes, they can add video, music, whatever they want, and kind of mock your child, which you may not even be thinking of now as a parent when you put
and
that stuff
and
online.
also the AI manipulation of images now is so instant. I mean, Igor, one of our engineers here, who normally sits behind the camera, can take snaps from this podcast, and just manipulate them and turn them into anything really immediately live. There's a new AI model everyone was talking about last week, which takes pictures of Taylor Swift, and if you want them in spicy mode, she immediately gets undressed. And this is just. And when you start to combine this with pictures of children, aren't we entering into a whole different ball game?
Yeah, and the thing with Taylor Swift, she has a public profile. She can control what gets put out of her to a large part. She's also a grown, consenting adult, right? So there's a difference between you putting your images online and a 5-year-old who you can't really speak for them in this way. And the thing is that your digital footprint lasts so much longer than if you take a photo and you put it in a photo album and it stays in your cupboard at home, which I know for lots of people it's shocking. You might even print your photos. Like, who does that? But I do. But I think it's a bit different. The kind of exposure. Maybe people just aren't thinking about it. They're not used to that idea. That once you put this photo online, you do lose control over what's happening to it.
I'm really
So this
interested in
isn't.
this, just sort of connecting this to the idea of child autonomy, because you kind of mentioned like posting pictures of me online as a child, but social media as it currently exists wasn't a thing until I was about 14. And so you weren't putting pictures of me as a baby or me as a toddler online when I would not have been able to consent to that. By the time,
Yes, indeed.
as my parents, you'd upload a picture of me like, oh, we went for a nice barbecue or something, and I was a teenager, I could say like, oh God, that's a terrible picture. Can you take that down? And I feel, there's the sort of the exploitation argument, but also just the autonomy argument of like, when you're 5, you can't actually consent to a photo of you being put online. And Kirsty, I'm sort of interested in your view of this, because as adults, if someone puts a photo of you up that just looks terrible and you're really embarrassed and you're like, oh God, that's not a good angle, can you take that down please? We have that autonomy, but child autonomy is quite different. What do you think about that?
Yeah, and the photos and videos that get put up of these children, they're like mostly naked running around or something. If I ever did that and someone put this video up of me, for sure I'd be report, take that down. But it's a different thing. Like the child, like you say, cannot complain, cannot even realize the implication of what's happening. And I know it's tough because, Emily, I think you mentioned virtue signaling earlier. It's not about saying this is, how you should parent your children. They must only eat vegetables and you must never do any of this. I think it's more about knowing the risks and taking a more considered, balanced view of it. And in truth, most people don't see any harm in uploading photos or videos of their children to the wide open internet. Even if you were sharing photos on Facebook, I would hope that, back in the day, I would hope that it's with a network of friends, that you've locked down the permissions, and these are all friends you genuinely know in real life. It's not your gardener's, second cousin who you met one time. It's a bit of a different, not that I have a gardener either, by the way, that's very classist, but you know what I mean, these kind of very tenuous, loose connections. So I think it's just being a bit more mindful. We would never really let our children go out completely unsupervised and hang out with 1,000 total strangers without us being able to see what's happening. And essentially, if you're sharing a video or photo, you have no idea what happens to that video or photo after it's been put up.
Can I just reflect that we've been talking about this subject and about the responsibility sitting with parents alone for keeping their children safe or doing the right thing. And I quite agree with you that sort of understanding what happens and being mindful about it is important. Is that where the responsibility begins and ends, Kirsty? Or do you think there is a role for government, for business? And where does the balance lie? And what do you think would help to keep children safer online?
A couple of levels to answer that. Firstly, if your child goes to school, the school won't take photos of your child and put them online publicly. So schools and other caregiving places aren't doing this. But in terms of educating your children themselves about what is okay online, where they should be looking, where they should not be looking, I think largely that lies with parents. But of course, schooling, environment, other parents as well. You've got children who are peers. Other parents can be very helpful in sharing their best practices and what's worked for them. I think there is an education piece. Not that can be done at home, but for parents who aren't digital comfortable, that can be quite tricky. How do they really know what is possible if they're not involved in these kind of social media things themselves or just the internet generally? I know this is called the internet seriously, but the internet generally is quite a topic for a lot of adults and grandparents, of course. When I say parents, I'm referring to all caregivers. It's not just, the traditional biological parent. It's anybody who has a role in that child's upbringing and well-being. So absolutely, I think there's a lot we can be doing, making the conversation normal, just making sure that children have a safe space to discuss what their parents want to talk about, what they want to talk about, what their friends are doing, what they've heard about, just like any aspect of parenting, right? You just want to bring your children up right. And I think digital comfort is something we should be trying to pass on to our children and try to get them engaged with what's going on and make sure that they feel comfortable and secure and confident when they're dealing with the internet.
Do you think that the internet, we've seen this landmark UK Online Safety Act, which is seeking to protect children, and you're really talking about a safer, you call it a comfortable space for families, for children. We're also seeing a real backlash and real sort of anger about this from technologists as well. Do Do you think we're on the right track? I mean, I know you can't really answer for Splunk. Do you think the technology is in place? We're clearly moving towards age verification of some sort and digital identity and dependency on that. And what about the other side of that? That we end up sort of over depending upon digital identity, and that becomes a fantastic key to do what you like once you're in.
Yeah, I think the technologists are quite often pointing out the flaws, right? You can get around age verification. Well, of course you can. But the point is, for a child that is unwittingly seeing this kind of content online and they don't want to be seeing it, it will protect them from that accidental harm. And I think part of it is a cultural shift. I remember when ID verification came in for buying alcohol in supermarkets, and it was challenged 25 in the UK. And, you know, if you were actually 21, but you didn't have your ID with you, you looked under 25, you wouldn't be sold that alcohol. And initially, you know, everyone's really grumbling about this. It's so frustrating. You know, everyone can get around this. Their parents could just buy them alcohol, blah, blah, blah. But the point is, it stopped children whose parents didn't know they were buying alcohol from going into a supermarket and buying alcohol. Was it a perfect system? No. But did it help? Yes. And now almost no one I know grumbles about having to show ID. That's just normal. You buy alcohol, you have to show identification. And I think it will become more of a cultural norm. Right now, we're just seeing it as an inconvenience or a control on our liberty. But actually, you know, legislation exists for a reason. I don't think there's any legislator that says, you know what I want to do today? I want to make everything more complicated. I want to do more work. And I want to write legislation that is useless and everything.
I agree.
You know, that just never happens.